So you guys already know that we are hyped for Wano Kuni, specifically Kaido's crew, his calamities, the strats, what's going to happen. It's going to be insane. That is pretty much the consensus. But talking a little bit more specifically, it's been what, guys? 5 years, if not more, where we have been speculating and thinking about Kaido's calamities and Kaido himself and what are their devil fruits going to be. And so finally, having gotten to meet the final two calamities in the recent chapters of One Piece, Queen and King, we finally have at least a little bit of information to speculate on. So today, guys, I want to talk about King's Fruit. Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So guys, I don't think that this is going to be any profound, oh my god, you figured it out, this is definitely the correct answer, a sort of theory video for you guys, but I do want to talk about King's Fruit, and what it is that I think, based on what we do know, would be a very reasonable guess for what his fruit could be. But I don't really expect this to take too long, so let's just jump right into it. So we'll start off here, guys. This is simple, this is easy to believe, and I think everybody would be on the same page. King probably has a devil fruit, and that devil fruit is probably a zone type. Kaido decided to call his pirate crew the Beast Pirates. On top of this, we know that he wants to collect an army of ability users. So of Kaido's crew, with the exception of a few Supernova, we know that they are all either Smile Fruit users or Zone type ability users, like Jack with the Mammoth Fruit, or X-Drake with the T-Rex Fruit, Kaido himself with the Dragon Fruit. It's just it's a legion of various kinds of animals. So knowing that for ability users in Kaido's crew, it doesn't really matter whether you have a Smile or a normal Devil Fruit. We know that the other Calamity Jack has an Ancient Zone. I think it's fair to speculate that King has a zone type fruit of some kind. Alright, now we got that out of the way, so what is it going to be? And so there's been a lot of speculation over the course of the years as to various possible patterns Oda could follow when it comes to Kaido's calamity, but I think the one that for years persuaded me the most was the idea that Jack is an ancient zone. So then the other two calamities would have other kinds of rare zone type fruits, but that are slightly different. So if Jack is an ancient zone, then it's possible Queen is a prehistoric zone, similar to X-Drake, maybe like a dinosaur of some kind, and then you would have one mythical zone. Oda likes his patterns, and it's just something that I think fits for me, for each of the devil fruits of the calamities to be in various unique classes. Also, another way to potentially take this is that one of the calamities actually has a regular zone type fruit, while Jack is the ancient and then another one is a mythical. But in the end, it doesn't really have to follow any patterns. It's just something that is relatively common throughout One Piece. Like looking, for instance, at the admirals, you can find all sorts of patterns and parallels with even before and after the time skip. First off, they were all Logia types, and then when several of the admirals had to be replaced, then you can find connections between light, gravity, and potentially life or nature. But when it comes to speculating what King's Fruit is going to be, I think that it's hard to really diversify my thoughts, because we've already seen something very strange about King, which kind of limits him as to what kind of zone type devil fruit he could have. When we see him in chapter 926, there seems to be a small flame growing above his head. Originally when I read this, I thought, well, maybe there's like a light or some sort of torch behind him, but I'm completely convinced that this fire is actually coming off of his head. Like, for real, King gives me this ghost rider vibe. No current or ancient or prehistoric creature that I know of that actually exists in the real world or in the world of One Piece would be actively on fire. Which would mean that King's Fruit almost has to be mythical, right? Mythical zone creatures are the only ones who would have these kinds of special properties and powers. And honestly, guys, for me, this just makes sense. It's just something that just makes sense. King is set up to be the strongest calamity. That is my impression of him. When it comes to the strongest calamity, I would expect them to have the strongest zone type fruit out of all of them, and that would almost have to be a mythical. The hype that's just associated with the mythical fruit, it just all works. Additionally, we're already speculating that Zoro is going to be the person to fight him, mainly because he wears katana. He seems to be some sort of swordsman, and if you're looking for Straw Hat, to fight a calamity. You know, Zoro stands out to you. He's a swordsman. Zoro's a swordsman. That fight just works. And on top of that, you have foreshadowing of Zoro wanting to learn somehow to cut fire. And we have King, who appears to be a fire-related possible mythical zone. Again, guys, it just works. But before we can go further and actually speculate what I think that this fruit could be, we need to talk about certain aesthetics about his design. First off, he seems to be a jailer from Impel Down, or at least was a jailer from Impel Down, possibly, you know, a torturer of some kind. He's just wearing the exact same clothes as we could see from Impel Down. And even in the same chapter, Oda decided to show us Shiryu of the Rain, who obviously is also from previously Impel Down. They're just wearing the same exact thing, and it's just too coincidental. Oda is imaginative enough. He has a diversity of potential designs to choose from. For him to choose the same one just seems very significant to me. So it's likely that King was previously from Impel Down. We also need to talk about his wings. Is the wings some sort of, you know, is it related to his fruit in some way? Is he some kind of bird when he transforms? Or are these wings natural? Another thing to point out about Impel Down is that most of the people from Impel Down had wings. Whether or not these are real or not is a real question. But it's just something odd that is the case. So guys, we don't really have a lot to go on, so I'm just going to share my gut feeling, like what it is that I just feel like is the case, but you can't really argue with that much. I just feel like the wings are natural. They're not a product of his devil fruit. He's literally a winged dude, which is not uncommon in the world of One Piece. Obviously, we've been up to Skypiea. We've seen people like Magellan and Rouge and Gecko Moria. Wings, just, they can exist. Separate to a devil fruit ability. So that leads us back to King and what I think that his devil fruit is. So we've already speculated that it's going to be related to fire. It will be a mythical zone. And I want to throw in one last concept before we actually name it. I think that it's possible that it relates in some way to hell. That really seems very critical to the conception of King himself. I mean, he's from Impel Down, which is really hell on earth. I mean, when we went to Impel Down itself, it was sort of described as the various layers of hell. And even looking at his design, you could almost describe him as a fallen angel. He has wings like an angel, but obviously he is more akin to a demon. Honestly, design-wise, I wouldn't be surprised if Oda wasn't at least in part inspired by, you know, like Satan or the devil or Lucifer, whatever you want to call him. It's a pretty common motif in religious mythology for there to be a person that was cast down from heaven into hell. Or whatever you want to call hell, the underworld. You can look at King, if indeed he did work in Impel Down, as being maybe a servant of God, God in this case representing the celestial dragons. He may have been one of God's angels. The gods cast their angel, King, to hell, Impel Down, where he became a demon. Anyway guys, I think that this is definitely an area where you could look more into it and find other potential connections. But mainly when I was looking for a devil fruit, for him to have a mythical devil fruit, I was looking for something that might in some way relate to this. So I really doubt that King has the devil fruit, but possibly has something like a fire demon. But I'm not really sure if Oda is going to be that general when it comes to devil fruits. But it is certainly possible. Remember, just because something is a zone type doesn't mean it necessarily has to be a straight up animal. A human fruit technically is a zone type fruit. And Sengoku's Buddha fruit is a mythical human fruit. So almost opposite to a Buddha or like a god-like figure, you would have a demon. But I think that combining all the ideas that I've already shared with you, a common speculation from a lot of people probably in the comments section, would be some kind of Cerberus or Hellhound-like mythical devil fruit. Now, Cerberus is not always associated with fire. Hellhounds, again, not always associated with fire. But when hell itself, in whatever religious mythology is considered to be a fiery place, they typically have those abilities. Both of these creatures are considered to guard hell. And I think fits extremely well with the idea behind the Beast Pirate's crew. As opposed to being a demon, you're an actual animal. Honestly here guys, it just depends on how Oda wants to be inspired. He can literally do pretty much whatever it is that he wants to do, honestly. But if we're going to boil it down to speculation like, JB, what is it that you believe? Or what is it that you want to believe? I think that when it comes to devil fruit speculations, want is a big component of that. And I do like the idea of a demon more so than I do a hellhound or Cerberus-like creature. So if I'm just going to choose like a very specific but yet famous kind of creature that is associated with various hells, my guess for King's Devil Fruit would be that of an Ifrit or an Ifrit. Now guys, an Ifrit is from Arabic mythology, and what it is essentially is a jinn or a genie. If you've ever watched Aladdin, there are many different kinds of jinn, and one of the more famous kinds is the Ifrit, which is boiled down to as simple as possible a fire spirit, typically depicted to be evil and reside in the underworld. I don't know how many people out there might have played the Final Fantasy games, but in Final Fantasy you can summon various kinds of creatures, I suppose, and one of those is the Ifrit. Now I don't consider myself to be an expert on Arabic religion and Islam, but according to mythology, the Ifrit was one of the first groups of beings to be created by Allah, who also created humans. However, the Ifrits did not like this preferential treatment of humans, and some of them lashed out against Allah, or God. One in particular was named Iblis, who is also called Shaitan. Iblis or Shaitan really is the Islam equivalent of like Satan in Christianity, and he is in mythology a Ifrit. But let's bring this back to King, because there are some interesting connections. So it's first worth pointing out that an Ifrit can appear in many different forms. They have, like a strong form, but they can also appear as animals and humans. But in some legends, it suggests that when an Ifrit appears in human form, they appear as people who have been turned black by fire, which works alarmingly well with King. Another interesting connection is that in some legends, Ifrits gain power from the blood of murder victims. This is sort of related to the idea that Ifrits are beings of smokeless fire, but in other legends, they are beings of blood, created from it, and they are often driven to do the will of those who were murdered, which creates the impression of a vengeful spirit. And I think that this also works really well for King, as we know he is some kind of torturer. And I guess the last connection, guys, is the general appearance of an Ifrit. Obviously, there can be a lot of differences between even the very same mythology descriptions of them, but generally an Ifrit is described as an enormous creature with wings, made of smokeless fire. And when they appear in human form, they appear as though they have been burned black by fire. But anyway, guys, I just really like this idea. I think that this works really well in conjunction with what we have seen from King thus far, but obviously there are many possible ideas out there, and I do expect Oda to add his own little twist to everything, regardless if we're even close. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you dislike the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.